The small village of Armero in Colombia was nestled in a vibrant green valley, with families going about their daily peace and children playing soccer in the streets without a care in the world. 13-year-old Omayra Sánchez Garzón was a bright and lively young girl with a passion for learning and dreams of becoming a doctor one day to help those in need. She lived happily with her large family, feeling safe in the shelter of the community she had known her whole life. That sense of safety was shattered on the evening of November 13, 1985, when the nearby Nevado del Ruiz volcano stirred from its slumber after nearly a century of inactivity. As fiery ash and smoke spewed into the darkening sky, the ground began to rumble and shake violently. The muted sounds of panic and confusion quickly crescendoed into screams of terror as a monstrous torrent of volcanic mud and debris came crashing down the mountain towards the village below. Chaos erupted in the streets of Armero as people desperately attempted to flee from the fast-approaching landslide. Omayra had been casually doing homework, unaware of the impending catastrophe about to befall her hometown. Her family scrambled to gather essentials before fleeing, but there simply wasn't enough time for them or anyone else to escape. The eruption gave less than 30 minutes' notice. When the dust and debris finally settled, where Armero once peacefully stood was nothing but destruction and death lingering in the air. The entire village had been buried under over 30 feet of thick, heavy mud that hardened to the consistency of concrete. Well over 20,000 men, women and children were entombed in the debris, crushed to death by the immense force of the chaos and ruin. Omayra found herself trapped within her modest home by mud and wreckage. From the waist down she was pinned in place, the weight of the debris having shattered bones in her legs. She was soaked cold, in pain and utterly alone aside from a few rescue workers who made it to the outer walls of her house. For over 60 agonizing hours, the entirety of Colombia and much of the world beyond sat transfixed in horror at the suffering of the innocent child. As the tragedy unfolded, journalists and photographers captured gut-wrenching images of the calm yet desperate Omayra, haunting the consciousness of humanity. As she bravely fought pain, hypothermia and fatigue while awaiting rescue, she became the face and story defining the devastation of the Armero tragedy to the outside world. Her quiet dignity and strength in the face of such senseless disaster touched the hearts of millions. Thousands of residents had been killed instantly, but Omayra tragically lingered despite rescue efforts unable to reach her. The hardened mud and wreckage entombing her made extraction impossible for rescuers with the simple tools they had on hand. For hours upon hours they struggled to save the suffering child, motivations waxing and waning between determination, desperation, and defeat. Omayra clung to fragile hopes of survival, encouragement and comfort from the rescuers her only distraction from the dire reality of her situation. After 3 excruciating days submerged in bone-chilling water, Omayra's brave fight for life came to a quiet close. Her strength finally drained mere days before what was to be her 14th birthday. Her tragic premature death and the loss of thousands more innocent lives left the nation shattered and in mourning. As news spread across Colombia, and quickly thereafter the world, a haunting yet innocent face was lent to represent the true scope of the devastation of Armero. Over 23,000 men, women and children lost their lives, but Omayra's tragic, drawn-out battle for survival personified the immense human loss and gripped the collective consciousness. Her fate highlighted the immense dangers that volcanoes can wield, especially when proper precautions by scientists and officials are not taken seriously. More tragically, it illuminated the lack of resources, equipment, training and preparedness needed to respond to massive disasters. As Colombia and nations around the world grieved, government inquiries soon revealed a heartbreaking truth. Though little could have been done for most victims that dreadful night, young Omayra could have and should have been saved had proper preparations and emergency policies been in place. The tragic and preventable loss of such a young, vibrant soul was a wake-up call heard around the world. Omayra's memory kept alive by the haunting images of her struggle. She represented optimism enduring even in the darkest hour of disaster and avoidable tragedy. Her courage until the end inspired sweeping reforms in disaster preparedness and vigilance to the risks of volcanic regions, saving countless lives in subsequent years. Decades later, The name Omayra Sánchez Garzón remains synonymous with the human face of natural disasters and the hope that even out of immense tragedy can come powerful lessons to make the world a safer place. Though her loss can never be reversed, she lives on through such life-saving changes made in her memory, as well as the spirit of selflessness she embodied living her short 13 years. While the village she called home is rebuilt and people once again walk the streets, the shadow of that tragic night remains etched in Colombia's history, and the nation continues honoring a young girl who showed unbelievable bravery and dignity till the very end.